Okay, so this is week 22 for popular culture, and we're going over some New Year's things that we do often.
So here, here are some of the earliest New Year celebrations that have existed in the past. So one of the earliest recorded festivities in honor of a New Year's arrival occurred approximately 4,000 years ago in ancient Babylon. For the Babylonians, the first new moon following the vernal equinox, which is the day in late March with an equal amount of sunlight and darkness, is heralded the start of a new year. And when it is this day, they launch a ritual known as the Akitu. Then this led to civilizations starting to develop their own calendars and depicting the first day of the year as a special event. For example, in Egypt, the year began with the annual flooding of the Nile, which coincided with the rising of the star Sirius.
Next is the New York ball drop. So what the New York ball drop is there's a giant ball-shaped crystal that's attached to a flagpole, and the ball begins at the top of the flagpole and it slides down until it reaches the bottom. So the reason this exists is because this is one of the methods that we use to count down when the new year starts. So the ball will begin sliding down at 11:59 p.m. on New Year's Eve, and then it will reach the bottom at exactly 12 a.m. on New Year's Day. So the ball drop is located in Times Square, which is a famous plaza in New York. You can see it in the first photo. And every year, a lot of tourists will gather to New York to watch the ball drop. And the ball drop has been located in Times Square since the first time that it was used.
Okay, so these New Year resolutions are a tradition to continue good practices and change undesired traits or behaviors and accomplish a personal goal. And basically, it's to improve a person's life at the start of a new year. And the history of it is that the Romans began each year by making promises to the god Janus, for whom the month of January is named by. And the 2014 report said that actually, out of everyone who failed the resolutions, 35% created unrealistic goals, 33% did not keep track of their progress, 23% forgot about them, and then 1 in 10 respondents claimed they made too many. Common examples of new resolutions at our age are fitness, health, organization, school, and job related. And you can always make a New Year's resolution anytime you want.
So here I'll be talking about a little history of fireworks and also firecrackers. So many historians believe that fireworks originally were developed in the 2nd century BC in ancient Liuyang, China. And also the first firecrackers were bamboo stalks. When they were thrown in a fire, they could explode with a bang because of the overheating of the hollow air pockets in the bamboo. The Chinese believed these natural firecrackers would ward off evil spirits. And then later man made them into fireworks, which you can see on the right top corner. By the 15th century, fireworks, which is another form of firecrackers, were used widely around the world for celebrations and religious festivals. So how do we use fireworks to celebrate in modern day? Today, we use them for all sorts of occasions, from Independence Day to Olympics opening ceremonies. But one of the biggest days of the year for a fireworks display is New Year's Eve. In the United States particularly, people usually set fireworks to celebrate their Independence Day, which is the anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which is on July 14th.
You can skip this slide. Okay, thank you. This is our bibliography. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Okay, welcome back to the Education for Nepal English group. This is history, and today we'll be covering the Mongol conquest and the Yuan dynasty. Okay, sorry, it's not working. Hold on. Okay, welcome back to the Education for Nepal English group. This is history, and today we're covering the Mongol conquest and the Yuan dynasty. This has been the teaching plan for the past units. And so for the past few lessons, we've covered some of these dynasties, and today's we'll cover 1271 to 1368 AD. So for the background, the breakout of the Mongol Empire. So the 13th century breakout of the Mongols created the largest land-based empire in all of human history, stretching from the Pacific coast to Eastern Europe. This empire brought the major civilizations of Eurasia, which is Europe, China, and the Islamic world, into direct contact. Both the destructive process of the conquests and the resulting networks of exchange were the work of a population numbering only 700,000 people, which is also the Mongols. And there's a picture, or there's a map of the Mongol Empire from 1259 AD. So who is Genghis Khan? During the late 1100s, an individual decided to step up and unify several of the tribes in Mongolia. He first was known as Temujin, but after becoming the leader of the Mongols, his name was changed to Genghis Khan, and he became the emperor for all of Mongolia. The process of conquering all of Mongolia took over 20 years. After uniting Mongolia, he brought his army and decided to invade all the way into Central Asia and Iran. After his death, the Mongol empires were able to conquer from Pacific Ocean to Carpathian Mountains and the Mediterranean Sea. This accomplishment was even greater than that of Alexander the Great or the Romans. This is Genghis Khan's early life. Genghis assumed a leadership role really early in his life because his dad, which was a tribal leader, was poisoned when he was 9 years old. His father, Yasugai, had a second wife with whom they had 2 sons. Because Yasugai was a tribal leader, the succession was unclear between the kids. It was logical for Genghis to take the succession as he was the firstborn of the original wife. During 1180, Genghis and his brother decided to invade Yasugai's children and killed off the firstborn while sparing the second one. After he was the leader, Genghis was expected to lead armies full of 50 to 60-year-olds. At that time, 15-year-olds were considered men. Through alliances, Genghis was able to overthrow and rise in the ranks of leadership.
Okay. So I want to. Can we go back to the last slide? The slide before this slide. Can we go back to the last slide?
Yes, sorry, it's just not going. It's like stuck. Okay.
All right. Whatever. What I want to add on this. So, Genghis Khan was actually not the true name of this guy. So Genghis Khan is like a title instead of a name. It means the emperor that rules the sky or the ocean in Mongolian, and the name Khan means the highest leader in Mongolian. So it's actually like a title instead of the true name. The true name was actually the name he was first known as, which was Temujin. And and speaking about the conquer of the world by Genghis Khan, it wasn't a shame to the European or the Asian civilization. It was a typical pattern that the in the ancient time, specifically before the industrial evolution, the nomadic civilization will always conquer the agricultural civilization or the um or the trading civilization or whatever, like European or Asian civilization. So that's why and the reason for that is the agricultural civilizations hadn't developed enough technology to build to build weapons like gun or cannon. That's why they are always like weaker. They always seem to be weaker um, than the nomadic civilization like Mongolians. Um, but after the agricultural civilization invented the invented weapons like gun or cannon, um, nomadic civilization like it's no longer a like a rival of them because they're easily defeated. So we can continue. And we can continue to the next part.
Yeah, I'm just I need to present
It's
it.
okay. So now we're gonna discuss the Mongols in China. So China was among the most difficult and extended of the Mongol conquests, lasting about 70 years from 2009 and 20 wait, I mean 1209 and to 1279. The invasion started in northern China, where widespread destructions and plundering happened. Southern southern China was still under the control of the Southern Song dynasty, and it was different. It was different from the other areas that was conquered by the Mongols. So the Mongols were much less violent and concerned about accommodating the local population. So actually, they chose to adapt the the local way of ruling instead of using the Mongolian way to rule the local population because China has a huge population and the original way of like ruling the country like the nomadic way um, it doesn't work in such a great population. That's why they need to like adapt to the to the local way of ruling. So the Mongols were the one who like promoted this strategy was the Kublai Khan, who was the founder of the Mongol Yuan dynasty. So, for example, landowners were guaranteed to keep their land in exchange for their support. The Mongols were successful in conquering and unifying a divided China, which led some educated Chinese to believe that Mongols had been granted the mandate of heaven and were, as a result, legitimate rulers. So, actually, in this period, um, there are legal racism existed in China, which was basically saying that the Mongolians were were more superior than the local Han people. which was the main body and has been the main body uh, of the Chinese population. And I want to discuss some of the history of how did the Mongols uh, conquer China. So actually, in Song Dynasty, there were several other kingdoms on the north of Song Dynasty, and there were Khitan, and another that's called Jing. So actually, the first time Song was like the northern Song became the southern Song. The reason for that was the Jing dynasty in the north of Song dynasty was like very strong, and they defeated the Song troops, and they finally they they took some of the Song's land, and then Song dynasty's land shrink to like a much smaller area, and became southern Song. And then because the Qing dynasty was too strong, and it became too big a threat to both the Mongols and the Chinese. So so the Mongols and the southern Song dynasty, they collaborated to defeat the Qing dynasty. But then the Mongols, they just the Mongols took most part of the Qing dynasty, and then the Mongols became the enemy of the southern Song dynasty, and finally the southern Song dynasty was completely defeated by the Mongols, and then the result of that is the Mongol Yuan dynasty, and this dynasty was also the dynasty that owns that owns the largest territory in the Chinese history. So we can continue. So the start of the Yuan dynasty, following the conquest, the Mongols gave themselves the Chinese dynasty title of the Yuan. They located their capital at what is now Beijing and made use of the Chinese administrative practices. As I said before, they adapt to the local way of ruling. And they also use the Chinese taxation systems and postal network. Um, and actually, Beijing at that time was called Dadu. And then the Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, and China's Mongol ruler from 1271 to 1294 ordered a set of Chinese-style ancestral tablets to honor his ancestors and awarded them Chinese names. Many of his policies evoked the value of a Confucian-inspired Chinese emperor as he improved roads, built canals, lowered taxes, supported scholars, and limited the death penalty. Mongol rulers also made use of the traditional Confucian rituals and were attracted to a form of Buddhism. So, speaking of the death penalty, there was a very notorious practice in the Mongols, in the Mongols' time. In their heyday, like the days they were super strong and they conquered most part of the Europe and Asia. The most notorious practice of them was to commit massacre, or in other words, after they conquer a city, they will kill everyone in this city, and they will reproduce with the local women to make sure that their lineage is purely Mongolian. So it's significant that they limited the death penalty, which means that they stop using such violent and inhumane um, like practice in the Yuan dynasty. And then it comes to the end of Yuan dynasty. So despite these accommodations, the Mongol rule was still harsh, foreign and resented. But the Mongols didn't become Chinese, nor did they accommodate every aspect of Chinese culture. And it's because, as I said before, the agricultural civilization is always it's always weaker than the nomadic civilization in the ancient times. However, the nomadic civilization usually can't keep their their reign or the period they rule. They can't keep their reign for long because it was mainly because they weren't as familiar as they weren't as familiar with the way of ruling as the agricultural or the feudal civilizations. So Mongol didn't become Chinese, nor did they accommodate many every aspect of Chinese culture. And many of the Mongol elite preferred to live, eat, and sleep in the traditional tents, which means they don't uh like do the things that keeps the country running. They just slack off. So it made the social system very inefficient, and that's what caused the collapse of Yuan dynasty. So Mongols largely ignored the traditional Chinese examination systems for selecting officials and instead heavily relied on foreigners, particularly Muslims from Central Asia, to serve as officials. Few Mongols learned Chinese, and Mongol laws discriminated against the Chinese. In social life, the Mongols forbade intermarriage and prohibited Chinese scholars from learning the Mongol script. By the mid-14th century, factionalism among the Mongols, rising prices, epidemics of the plague, and growing peasant rebellions combined to force the Mongols out of China. By 1368, rebel forces emerged victorious, and thousands of Mongols returned to their homeland in the steppes. A native Chinese dynasty, the Ming dynasty, replaced them and ruled until 1644. So it was epic because at the end of the Yuan dynasty, there were rebellions everywhere, and it was at the probably the most the harshest time, because there were drought and people don't have food to eat, and like the Yuan dynasty was overusing the local people as laborers or slaves to build meaningless projects. So the Chinese people they started the rebellion, and because they are more populated, um, the Mongols couldn't keep their ruling for long. So we can continue. Maybe anyone else can continue.
The cultural achievements of the Yuan dynasty. So in the previous Chinese dynasties, art had been widely encouraged by the state. During the Yuan, however, artists, especially those native Chinese who refused to serve their conquerors, had to seek inspiration within themselves and their traditions. And these painters sought in their art a return to what they viewed as more ideal times, especially the Tang and the Northern Song dynasty periods. Artists, therefore, firmly fixed the ideal of literal painting, which valued personal expression above mere representation. There was also an emphasis on simple forms, such as bamboo or rocks, and on calligraphy. Calligraphy is basically writing characters or words, but in an artistic way, and often with long complementary inscriptions on the paintings themselves. In addition to a renewed emphasis on traditional craft arts, such as silver, lacquer, and other materials, there were important developments in ceramics. Various earlier traditions were continued, but there was also interest in producing new shapes, decorations, and glazes. The most important of them was the first appearance of the blue and white ware. The picture on the left shows a blue and white vase. These consists of white porcelain and blue underglades, which will become very popular in later periods. And they will become popular among Western collectors as well. In fact, they probably is the most widely seen porcelain uh, in Chinese history. In my opinion. So the impacts of the Yuan dynasty. They led to development of Java, novel, and written vernacular. Their political unity increased trade between the East and the West. This is actually something that always happened in history. So as you may know, trade between East and West, especially trade of valuable and expensive goods, often happen through the Silk Road. And trade on the Silk Road is the most successful when the areas surrounding the Silk Road are ruled by large empires. For example, during the period when Europe was ruled by the Roman Empire and China was ruled by the Han Dynasty or an earlier dynasty, trade would have been better than a period when there were war and chaos. So Western musical instruments were also introduced to Chinese performing arts. There were advancements made in literature, cartography. Cartography means making maps, geography, and more. For mathematicians during this period developed some fundamental math knowledges such as Pascal's triangle and spherical trig. So for Pascal's triangle, it was developed in the Western world by this guy named Pascal, obviously. But in China, it was developed by a mathematician called Yang Hui, and that's the name of the Pascal's triangle in Chinese, which is something that's quite interesting. The same thing has different names in two different cultures because it was developed by different people in separate cultures. Medicine, acupuncture, and herbal medicines were spread to the Middle East through Mongolian military expeditions and printing and publishing. Private printing companies published educational, historical, and religious texts. This is also when paper money were used. I'm pretty sure they were also used in earlier dynasties, but I think this is when they first introduced a fiat currency, basically a currency that's not based in gold or silver. It's just based in nothing. Which is very dangerous. That's the type of currency we use nowadays, and it's subject to problems like inflation and stuff. And that's the end of today. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, history group. Now we'll move on to physics. Naomi, are you ready? Okay.
Okay, I will. All right, welcome back to Physics Week 8. Today we'll be going over a shorter topic, and it's going to be about gravity. Oh, I forgot to delete this slide. Ignore it, please. Okay, so what is gravity? Gravity is the mysterious force that makes everything fall down towards the earth. And if you remember from one of our previous lessons, you would know that you would know that force is the push or pull that basically acts on an object as a result of that object's interaction with its surroundings. So for example, you see this like blue box, right? And if you were just to hold on to that box and then drop it, it would fall to the ground and it would splatter. And basically all objects have gravity. It just turns out that all objects have gravity, and it's just that some objects like the Earth and the Sun have a lot more gravity than others. So how much gravity an object has depends on how big it is, and to be specific, how much mass it has. And it also depends on how close you are to the object. The closer you are, the stronger the gravity. Okay, so why is gravity important? Well, without gravity, we would, we would be just living right here, and the moment gravity comes off, we just fly right off of it. So gravity is quite important because we'd all have to be strapped down, and if you kicked a ball, it would fly off forever. And while it may be fun to try for a couple of or a few minutes, we certainly couldn't live without gravity. But on a larger scale, it's the sun's life on Earth. We need the sun, right? The light and the warmth is what we need in order to survive. And gravity helps the Earth to just stay the right distance from the sun so that so that it's just not too hot or not too cold. And did you know that if the Earth's axis was tilted 90 degrees, which means like, you see how in this photo, Earth is like right here. And I'm not sure if you guys knew this or not, but Earth is actually, tilted a little bit. It's not straight, like, nothing is straight in this world. But if the Earth's axis was tilted 90 degrees, so like if this was the center of axis, and then it went like from here to here, we would have extreme seasons. Like during winter, we would be under extreme blizzards. And I mean, where I'm from, we really don't see any snow at all during winter, and during summer, yeah, it's pretty hot. But just imagine how extreme and different these seasons would be if that happened. All right, and during the summer, I heard that the northern hemispheres experience, okay, that's too much information going on. Who discovered gravity? So while the first person who dropped something heavy on his toe or her toe knew something was going on, gravity was first mathematically discovered by the scientist Isaac Newton, right? And we most likely know Newton for his 3 laws of motion: law of inertia, law of mass and acceleration, law of motion, and but the general term is, we call his theory Newton's law of universal gravitation. And here's a portrait of our good old friend, Mr. Newton, right? I pulled it up from his autobiography. What is weight? Weight is the force of gravity on an object. And our weight on Earth is how much force the Earth's gravity has on us and how hard it is pulling us towards the surface. So if you remember, force is mass times acceleration, and if you saw this, you would be like, oh, this makes sense. The formula for calculating weight is the same. Force equals mass times acceleration. This 9.8 meters per second stands for gravity on Earth, specifically only Earth. If you were on Mars or on the moon, your gravity, the amount, gravity would be quite different. Is all I can say for now. And so here's a trick question. If your mass was 40 grams and the gravitational force was 1.6 meters per second squared, do you know what would be the force? You can use a calculator, or you can pause this video, whatever suits you. I'll give you a couple more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, if you said 64 newtons, yes, you are correct. And you might be wondering, oh, what are newtons? Well, if you listened, you can reference back to our previous videos. I think we spent this one lecture, talking about Newton and what is a Newton. But basically, just multiply. It's universally understood by scientists. We measure kilograms times meters per second squared, and you get that conversion as newtons. If you if you want to check back on why it is that way, yeah, just reference a past video. Yeah. Okay, next. Do objects fall at the same speed? Yes, this is called the equivalence principle, and a continuation of the last slide about the 9.2 meters per second squared. So objects of different masses will fall to the earth at the same speed. If you took two balls, like Mr. Galileo here, of different masses at the top of a building, like he did. This is an experiment by a guy named Galileo at the top of Tower of Pisa, and pretty dangerously, where all these poor civilians are just looking up at them, not knowing when doom will fall on them at any day. This confused little bird. If you take two balls of different masses at the top of a building and drop them, they will hit the ground at the same time. This is true regardless of whether or not you used a bowling ball or a feather. And yeah, Mr. Galileo here, he has tested it for us, and it is true. Yeah, they will hit the ground at the same time. And there is actually a specific acceleration that all objects fall at, and we call that standard gravity, or G for short, which is equal to 9.807 meters per second squared. This is another shorter way to write it. But usually you'll see us just write 9.8 instead of, too many decimals. It's negligible, which means like you don't really have to consider it because it's so small. And what else? 9.8 meters per second is an approximate average acceleration of gravity on the surface of Earth. So of course, yes, Mr. Galileo here, he is living on Earth. This means that every second of free fall, which means when the object is falling and you don't care about the force of, air pushing back on it, the velocity of the falling object increases by 9.8 meters per second. Yeah, that's basically what I just said. Oh my God, I forgot a space here. What did I just do? Okay, next. Oh, okay. Anyways, that was a pretty short lesson. Here's one of our additional video.
We're all familiar with gravity as the reason objects fall, but there's much, much more to gravity than that. Gravity is a long-range attractive force between all objects with mass. It's what keeps us from falling off the Earth, it's what keeps the Earth in orbit around the Sun, and it's what caused the Sun itself to form 4.5 billion years ago. It's amazing to think that every massive object attracts every other in the universe. That means that your dog, the Earth, and a black hole in the Andromeda Galaxy 2.5 million light years away are all gravitationally attracted to you, and you to them. In the 17th century, Isaac Newton discovered that the strength of the gravitational force decreases by the square of the distance between two objects. So if you're twice as far away, gravity is only 1/4 as strong. He also discovered that the strength of gravity is proportional to the mass of the objects in question. The more massive an object, the stronger the gravitational force. That's why we can all feel the Earth pulling on us, but don't really notice the pull of the moon. It's smaller and farther away. The moon's gravity is strong enough to cause the tides, though. And when I said earlier that gravity is an attraction between objects with mass, I lied. I meant objects with energy. Because in addition to massive objects, gravity also attracts light and other massless but energetic particles, so that a photon of light can be bent slightly passing the sun or trapped completely by a black hole. Now do you understand the gravity of the situation?
Haha, haha. Funny joke at the end. Okay, how do I leave? No, stop. Oh, quite interesting. I hope you don't see my bookmarks. That's awkward. No, okay. And one last meme for the day. Kevin's when Newton discovers gravity. People laugh. Oh my god, that's my choice. Oh my god. Yeah. And these are our sources. Thank you for coming, and I hope you see us next week as well. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.